Part 26. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yun Suya. Chapter 251. Chapter 251. Can I still travel through time when I go to the toilet? Hey, brother I need your help if I need something. What? Come to Twilight Restaurant and I'll talk to you again. Good. Xia Ying and the Chu brothers came to Twilight Restaurant, ordered a high-end private room, and sat down. Xia Ying looked at the menu and ordered a table of dishes in succession. Chu Shenxiu swallowed silently, looked at Xia Ying in disbelief, and said, "Cousin Xia Ying, are you so good at eating?" Xia Ying looked at the large table of dishes and said, "It's not your fault. Like a monkey, you always seem to have endless energy. I'm tired and hungry now, and I have to treat myself." Xia Ying said and began to enjoy the food happily. "Cousin Sakura, aren't you afraid of gaining weight?" Chu Shenxiu smiled. "I'm more afraid of starving to death." Xia Ying puffed up her cheeks and answered him. Chu Shenxiu laughed after hearing this. Cousin Sakura is really cute. Even when she is devouring her food, she doesn't feel unladylike. Instead, she feels adorable. The food in this store is delicious. Xia Ying couldn't help but admired. "My brother never chooses the right restaurant," Chu Shenxiu said. "He can always identify whether a restaurant is really good among a group of troll-like comments. Who knows how he does it?" Chu Shenming drank the soup slowly and said nothing. After eating, Chu Shenxiu asked to go to the bathroom, and then Xia Ying and Chu Shenming stayed there playing with their mobile phones while waiting for him to come back. However, after waiting for a long time, Chu Shenxiu still did not come back. Moreover, his mobile phone is here and he didn't bring it with him, so he can't be contacted. Xia Ying frowned and said, "Isn't the turtle dove lost? There are rows of private rooms here, and they look exactly the same from the outside. If you can't remember the number, it's easy to get lost. Could it be that he got dizzy?" Chu Shenming raised his head and said in a deep voice, "The chance of 13 getting lost in a strange place is 50%. Xia Ying blinked in surprise. "So high? What's the probability that he'll get it back?" 60%. "Then let's go find him." Xia Ying stood up and said. "Wait a moment." Chu Shenming looked at his watch and made no move for a while. Xia Ying was puzzled and asked, "What's wrong?" "All right." Chu Shenming continued, "He hasn't come back for half an hour. The chance of getting lost is 90%. Xia Ying was stunned. "Okay, let's go then." Chu Shenming nodded, and the two left the box and started taking action separately. Xia Ying walked around the entire floor several times without seeing Chu Shenxiu. Where could that guy go? Is it possible that I can travel through time just by going to the toilet? Xia Ying was thinking this when she suddenly ran into two wretched middle-aged uncles with rough looks, beer bellies, and greasy hair sprayed with mousse. Xia Ying subconsciously turned around and prepared to leave. Her intuition told him that those two wretched uncles were not good people. Because as soon as they saw Xia Ying, they looked at Xia Ying from top to bottom with greedy eyes, which made Xia Ying's whole body feel horrified. He has to make peace with cousin Chu Shenming quickly, Xia Ying thought, and quickened her pace. "Hey, why are you two so slow?" However, Xia Ying didn't take a few steps when she bumped into a tall, thin, middle-aged man wearing glasses with sunken eyes. He looked like he hadn't rested for several days and had no energy at all. "I'm not feeling well today, so I won't set the conditions for extra updates. I'll wait for a few days and resume 3 updates in the next few days. By the way, the male protagonist is not too rough in this chapter. Hand over those who used spicy strips as bets, he he he." End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yun Suya. Chapter 252. Chapter 252, Sold or Kidnapped. The tall and thin man obviously noticed Xia Ying. Before he finished speaking, he immediately opened his mouth and widened his eyes, staring at Xia Ying intently. His eyes slid from Xia Ying's fair and slender neck to Xia Ying's two long and straight legs. It's really a shit, you can still encounter such a watery stunner in this kind of place. The tall and thin man suddenly showed a fierce look and glanced back. Xia Ying was horrified when she saw this, but she didn't have time to make any move. She was already restrained by two people behind her. One covered her mouth and nose to prevent her from making a sound, and the other restrained her hands to prevent her from moving. They forcefully dragged Xia Ying towards her box. Past. Hey, what are you doing? Just at this time, a waiter came over and saw the evil behavior of those people, so he scolded them. However, as soon as the waiter took a few steps closer to them, the tall and lanky man took out a pistol and threatened, "Shut up and get out of here, you have nothing to do here." The waiter originally looked filled with righteous indignation, ready to go over and rescue the beauty, but when he saw the gun, he was instantly frightened. He originally felt something was wrong when those few people entered the store. Now it seems that these people are either traitors or thieves. In short, they are not good people. The waiter's legs went weak and he immediately dropped the tray and ran away. The tall and thin man glanced at him, and one of the wretched men immediately chased the waiter. Two wretched old men dragged Xia Ying into the box. Xia Ying struggled all the way, but they were so many and powerful that she had no chance of escaping. After Xia Ying entered the box, she suddenly saw Chu Shenxiu, who was knocked unconscious. At this moment, Chu Shenxiu was lying on the sofa. A man with a big gold chain hanging around his neck sat next to him, drinking and looking at the two people. His eyes didn't shine until he saw Xia Ying. "Holy shit, our chicken's at this level now," De Jinlianzi said with emotion. "What a chicken, look at this little girl's famous brand, she must be the daughter of a wealthy family." The tall and thin man said, and then stared at Xia Ying with tears in his eyes, "This little girl is really handsome. I have seen countless women, and I have never seen such a beautiful thing. Are you going to sell it, or kidnap it?" De Jinlian asked. "It's rare to come across this kind of stuff, let me take it home to play with before selling it." The man with glasses smiled, showing a mouthful of yellow teeth. Xia Ying just wanted to vomit. Subsequently, Xia Ying's mouth was sealed with a seal, and then her hands and feet were tied so that she could not move. "What's going on with that boy on your sofa?" The man with glasses stared at Chu Shenxiu and asked. "Oh, this." De Jinlian turned around and glanced at Chu Shenxiu, "This kid is unlucky. He heard the phone call with the boss about the goods. After a few tricks with him, I found that he was quite powerful, and then I gave him a beating. Needle, knocked out now. Getting an injection?" Xia Ying's eyes widened in horror. "What did he do to Chu Shenxiu?" "I was just spotted by an unlucky waiter, and the third child chased me. We have to leave quickly." The tall and lanky man continued, "If you don't leave, it will be bad if the police come." "All right." De Jinlian stood up and answered. At this time, a group of special police officers were ambushing outside the Twilight restaurant. Among them were Officer Song and Yu Lingfeng. Remember to vote after reading this. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 253. Chapter 253. My woman is with them. Attention all departments, bugs are out. Officer Song whispered to the summons machine. Yu Lingfeng raised his eyebrows. Bug. This code name is quite special. When Yu Lingfeng's eyes fell on those people, he suddenly felt a twitch in his heart. Yu Lingfeng's originally expressionless face froze in an instant. He actually felt Xia Ying's signal, she was there. Yu Lingfeng's eyes focused on the two boxes pushed behind those people, and his eyes darkened. What did they want to do? What's wrong with you? Officer Song noticed something was wrong with Yu Lingfeng beside him, and the jungle nearby made a rustling sound. My woman is with them. Officer Song was stunned for 2 seconds after hearing this. Then he looked at Yu Lingfeng's serious face and couldn't hold back his laughter. When did you have a woman? Officer Song said half-jokingly. Since he and Yu Lingfeng have known each other for so long, he never knew that Yu Lingfeng would actually have someone he liked. He always thought that Yu Lingfeng was gay. Oh, no, he always thought that Yu Lingfeng was asexual. After all, this guy has always been a loner, and he exudes a deadly aura of you are not allowed to come near me, you will die if you come near me, let alone women. Not even a female mosquito would be able to get close to him. Police Officer Song never thought that he would still be able to see the moment when Yu Lingfeng fell in love in his lifetime. Yu Lingfeng stood up and was about to walk towards the group of people. Officer Song quickly grabbed Yu Lingfeng and yelled at Yu Lingfeng with his air current, "What are you doing? We still have to stay in bed, you have to calm down. Nothing will happen to your woman." Yu Lingfeng pursed his lips after listening to Officer Song's words. His piercing eyes were like ice pools at the moment, exuding a biting cold air. Yu Lingfeng finally held back, clenching his hands into fists and making a clanging sound. The men drove away, followed by members of the SWAT team in taxis. Those are drug dealer gangs that have been rampant for many years, committing crimes in more than a dozen countries. This is an international case, and Officer Song has been following it for many years. I just recently received news that they are coming to China to conduct a large-scale drug trade. This group of drug lords must be dealt with by the group. Otherwise, more people will be poisoned in the future. Hey, how do you know your woman is there? Officer Song smoked a cigarette and asked Yu Lingfeng. Yu Lingfeng kept looking at the car in front and said with a cold face, I can sense her position. As soon as Yu Lingfeng finished speaking, Officer Song immediately dropped the cigarette from his mouth in shock. Staring at Yu Lingfeng in disbelief, is this another one of your superpowers? Yu Lingfeng's face was indifferent, it's just a small invention. That's great, brother Yu. Officer Song gave Yu Lingfeng a thumbs up. The encounter between Yu Lingfeng and Officer Song was dramatic. Officer Song was performing a special mission at that time. Later, he was shot and covered with bruises. He thought he was going to sacrifice his life for the motherland and become a martyr. When he woke up, he was safe and sound. Yu Lingfeng saved him. Yu Lingfeng didn't pay much attention to what was happening in the outside world, but he only knew about Officer Song. The pride of the entire city, he has solved countless difficult cases, and is a well-known hero throughout the city. By chance, Yu Lingfeng met him when he was about to die, so Yu Lingfeng saved him. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 254. Chapter 254 I can't wait for 10 seconds. When Officer Song woke up at that time, he saw Yu Lingfeng and found that all the scars on his body had disappeared. And when he was told that he was still alive, he was immediately amazed. Later, he and Yu Lingfeng became good friends. He was the first human being to know that Yu Lingfeng had superpowers. Brother Yu, since you can sense the position of your woman, this matter will become much simpler. When they arrive at the lair, we will go there together. Yu Lingfeng frowned and glanced sideways at Officer Song. She will be hurt? Don't worry, tonight, there are special police ambushing in every corner of City A. As long as you know their gathering point, they can rush over in 10 minutes at most with an order. Officer Song said. Yu Lingfeng had a cold face and tapped his index finger on the sofa a few times uneasily. How long do you think it takes to kill someone? 10 minutes? Ha, I can't wait even 10 seconds. Officer Song retorted, there is no need for them to kill a woman. Even if they wouldn't kill her, What else do you think those people could do if they kidnapped her? Officer Song sighed, then what do you want to do? This is also his helpless move. This case is taken seriously internationally. Today, he finally encountered several of the gangs. It will be useless if he does not find the leaders behind the scenes. Their car won't be able to follow them for long. Although there are ambushes everywhere tonight, they still can't guarantee what accident might happen. At this time, Yu Lingfeng played a crucial role. I'll rush over first, and you can come over and collect their bodies later. Yu Lingfeng's tone was cold. No, they cannot kill them, they must keep them alive. They have harmed so many people, why do they still stay? Yu Lingfeng retorted. This is an order from a superior. After all, this is an international case. We have to explain it to the international community first, and there are many inside stories that we don't know. They are just a few minions, and the big boss has not confessed yet. Kill them, we don't know anything anymore, Officer Song explained. Don't worry, these people will definitely be shot. It's just that there is still some residual value. Yu Lingfeng pinched his eyebrows, looking impatient. Officer Song didn't know what to say, so he reached out and patted Yu Lingfeng on the back. Xia Ying and Chu Shenxiu were trapped in the back seat of the car. Chu Shenxiu opened his eyes in a daze. She was horrified to find that Xia Ying was actually next to her, but Chu Shenxiu's hands and feet were tied and his mouth was sealed. Moreover, the big gold chain just injected him with something unknown, and now he is drifting, as if he is sleepwalking. Chu Shenxiu kept struggling. Seeing this, the man with glasses glared at him fiercely and shouted, "You bastard, please be more honest." Xia Ying lowered her head, her mind in confusion. This is the first time in her life that she has encountered this kind of thing. I don't know where these people will take her. I don't know if Chu Shengming has discovered that she is missing, or if he has sent someone to look for her. Thinking of this, Xia Ying couldn't help but start to feel worried. What if no one knows their whereabouts? Will she really be sold? Brother, there is a car following us. The man with glasses said. De Jinlian glanced at the rearview mirror and smiled, showing his yellow teeth. I discovered it a long time ago. Don't worry, I can get rid of him in front of him. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 255. Chapter 255. Your watch is out of battery. Did someone at the hotel notice something was wrong and call the police? The man with the eyes guessed. The tall and thin man smiled with a look of disdain. So what if we call the police? We brothers have seen very few police officers. These little policemen can't do anything to us. The big gold chain also laughed, and the harsh laughter suddenly resounded throughout the van. Xia Ying noticed something unusual about Chu Shenxiu on the side. Chu Shenxiu's head was tilted back, his face was pale, his eyes were empty, and his breathing was heavy. He looked like he was in a very bad mental state. Xia Ying touched Chu Shenxiu with her arm, but Chu Shenxiu remained unmoved. The tall and thin man on the side saw this and smiled happily. Hey, this kid is starting to have symptoms. He is in a state of ecstasy, haha. When Xia Ying heard this, her eyes widened in surprise. What did he mean? What are the symptoms? What on earth did they inject Chu Shenxiu with? Seriously, I got an advantage over that guy. I originally planned to go to the bathroom to have a good time by myself, but that guy happened to show up and heard the conversation between me and the boss on the phone. I wanted to knock him out, but who? Knowing that the boy had actually practiced and was in good health, I had no choice but to hit him with heroin. Heroin. Poison. Xia Ying was stunned. She turned her head and looked at Chu Shenxiu, who was completely out of sorts. Her pupils were dilated, as if they were out of focus. He was actually injected with drugs by that group of people. Those people were drug dealers. No wonder Xia Ying just saw them carrying a big bag of something. So, those things are all drugs. Xia Ying's brain was stunned and she was stunned. She always thought that drugs were far away from her, but now they are so close, and the people around her are all drug lords. Xia Ying looked sideways and found that the tall and thin man next to her had a black dragon tattoo on his hand. Xia Ying blinked and suddenly remembered. In my previous life, there was an international drug lord gang that was very large. It took the international community more than 10 years and numerous casualties to capture several of their leaders. Among them, a leader named Lai Long has such a black dragon tattoo on his hand. Because that case was very important, Xia Ying remembered it very clearly. Even the tattoo is on the right hand and has the same shape. Moreover, Lai Long's body shape and height are similar to those of a tall and lanky person. So, she was caught by this group of people? Xia Ying is a little unbelievable. Damn it. Police officer Song uttered a foul language and was actually thrown away. It seems that those few are really not simple. The car stopped on the side of the road, and Yu Lingfeng didn't say anything the whole way. Keeping his head down at his watch, Officer Song glanced at it. Hey, brother Yu, your watch is out of battery. Police officer Song came. The hands of Yu Lingfeng's watch never moved, always staying at 9 o'clock. Yu Lingfeng lowered his head and said nothing. Officer Song saw that Yu Lingfeng was not in the mood to pay attention to him, so he didn't ask any more questions. Waiting quietly, when the group of people arrive at their destination, Yu Lingfeng will rush over as quickly as possible. Then, their manpower will rush over. Cheetah, have you noticed anything over there? Not in our surveillance area. I am a lion, and the bug is here, it just came over. Okay, all departments should be more vigilant and don't take it lightly. Yes sir. Recommended votes. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 256. Chapter 256 Yu Lingfeng, Save Me. The car of the Dajin chain group of people drove very far, all the way to the wilderness. Xia Ying looked out the window. It was already evening, and the sky had darkened. The afterglow of the sun filtered into the window through the gaps in the leaves of the rows of big white poplars on the road, and sprinkled on Xia Ying's tired face. Xia Ying's hands and feet were tied and she was kept in the same position. She was exhausted now and leaned weakly on the back of the seat. Chu Shenxiu had just recovered from the reaction of being injected with drugs, and now his whole body was weak. Chu Shenxiu looked sideways at the pale Xia Ying, frowning, feeling heartbroken. Xia Ying's arrest must have something to do with him. If he hadn't been nosy and saw the man making a drug deal on the phone, he took out his cell phone and prepared to call the police. Now none of this will happen, and Xia Ying won't be caught. Chu Shenxiu began to feel deep self-blame in his heart. Thinking of this, Chu Shenxiu was heartbroken and began to think of ways to escape. Even if Chu Shengming called the police and dispatched the police, they would not be found for a while. By the time they find it, they will probably have suffered a lot that would be worse than death. Chu Shenxiu's hands tied behind his back began to silently approach Xia Ying. Xia Ying felt the sudden touch and couldn't help but shiver. When she realized it was Chu Shenxiu, she breathed a sigh of relief. Due to the long journey, the tall and thin men began to feel tired, and they squinted their eyes and took a nap. Chu Shenxiu took this opportunity to secretly untie Xia Ying. Because his hands were tied, the range of movement was too small, and because of extreme nervousness, it took Chu Shenxiu nearly 10 minutes to free Xia Ying's tied hands. Xia Ying took out her mobile phone from her pocket with trembling hands, then pinned it behind her back and quietly sent a message to Yu Lingfeng. Yu Lingfeng, save me. When Yu Lingfeng on the other end received the text message, he could no longer calm down. Xia Ying had already sent him a distress message, how could he endure it? What if those wretched men touched her on the road? Yu Lingfeng thought this, and pictures began to appear in his mind. Damn it! Yu Lingfeng clenched his hands into fists, gritted his teeth and said two words from between his teeth. Officer Song was still checking with them the whereabouts of the drug dealers, which area they were in, and whether the hostages were currently in danger. Unknowingly, it was already dark. The road to Dajin Chain also became more and more remote, and finally we drove to an abandoned chemical factory in a remote countryside and stopped. When the car stopped, Xia Ying felt panicked. Why hasn't Yu Lingfeng come yet? Can't he switch between time and space? Why hasn't he shown up yet? Hey, why don't you two come down? Beer Belly roared angrily, then glanced at Xia Ying with his lute eyes, and said, is it possible that I can carry you down, brother? Fat man, put your hands up. At this moment, Chu Sensiu, who was behind Xia Ying, suddenly said something coldly. Xia Ying turned around and saw a Desert Eagle pistol appearing in Chu Sensiu's hand. Chu Sensiu's face was expressionless, but his eyes showed bloodthirsty terror at this moment. His lips were pursed indifferently, and the hand holding the gun did not shake at all. It seemed that he was very skillful. Let her go, or I'll shoot her. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 257. Chapter 257. The threat I hate most in my life. When Beer Belly saw the gun in Chu Sensiu's hand, he suddenly started sweating profusely and panicked. Then he raised his hands tremblingly, you brat, I'm telling you, don't mess around. Let her go. Chu Sensiu repeated it again, and then asked Xia Ying, can you drive? For it. Xia Ying stared blankly at Chu Sensiu. Where did he get the pistol? In this state, was he planning to sacrifice himself and let her go? Xia Ying bit her lower lip and stared at Chu Sensiu, with waves of light flowing in her pupils. I can. Xia Ying nodded. De Jinlian turned his head to look at the scene, then took out his pistol, aimed it at Chu Sensiu, and angrily yelled at Xia Ying, don't move, if you dare to take another step, I will shoot you. Xia Ying's body that had just moved a little froze again, so she had no choice but to dare not move. Let her go, or I'll shoot the fat man. I will do what I say. Chu Sensiu's eyes were bloodshot, and the expression on his face left no room for doubt. Because of this, Beer Belly became a little afraid. He was afraid that the Chu Saint religion would actually shoot him. The look of determination on his face really scared him. I hate being threatened the most in my life. The tall and lanky man interjected, then quickly took out his pistol and shot the Beer Belly in the head. With the sound of a gunshot, Beer Belly fell directly into a pool of blood. Xia Ying, who witnessed all this, screamed in fright and took several steps back. The gunshot just now was right next to her ears, and she still has some tinnitus. This group of people were so crazy that they even killed their own people. Chu Sensiu did not expect that things would turn out like this, and his eyes widened in surprise. The tall and thin man pointed his pistol at Chu Sensiu again and said, you brat, get down here. Chu Sensiu got out of the car angrily, and the tall and thin man said to the man beside him, go and give him an injection to make him be more honest. Roll. Chu Sensiu angrily scolded the man who was approaching him. The man met Chu Sensiu's sinister eyes and was inexplicably shocked by his aura and took 2 steps back. Upon seeing this, the tall and thin man narrowed his eyes, then raised the corners of his mouth, revealing a disdainful smile. Then, the tall and thin man pointed his gun at Xia Ying, and Chu Sensiu panicked. What you do? Either you get the injection, or I kill this little beauty. Chu Sensiu gritted his teeth, lowered his head, and then said coldly, come on, you'd better pray that I don't encounter you in the future, otherwise, I will definitely not be able to spare you. Ah! The tall and thin man sneered, Uncle? I'm still your father. Chu Shenxiu endured it and was injected with another dose of drugs. Xia Ying on the side had red eyes. Chu Shenxiu, a fool, didn't he know that drugs are addictive? Even if they get out safely today, he still has to spend a lot of time detoxifying, which is something worse than death. The tall and thin man found that Xia Ying's hands were untied, and immediately stepped forward with a look of displeasure on his face, grabbed Xia Ying's arm, and pulled her into the factory. Chu Shenxiu roared from behind, you ugly monster, don't touch her with your dirty hands. The tall and thin man paused, turned back and looked at Chu Shenxiu with dark eyes, hey, brat, you can't be arrogant for much longer. When his drugs take effect, he will know the difference between heaven and hell. The tall and thin man curled his lips and looked at Xia Ying beside him, with a lustful look in his eyes. The tall and thin man slowly stretched out his hand, just about to touch Xia Ying's fair and tender face. However, when he almost touched Xia Ying, his arm was suddenly grabbed by someone, and he was instantly turned backwards and fell to the ground. Ahem, I really didn't mean to be careless, I looked at Ni Meng sincerely. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 258. Chapter 258 I know you will come to save me. Looking for death. Xia Ying heard the sound and looked around. The man next to her was dressed in black. He had a handsome face and an indifferent expression. His eyes were as cold as a cold pool, emitting a terrifying light. The moment the man appeared, the temperature in the entire air suddenly cooled down. The powerful aura he carried made it possible for him to kill people without even saying anything or doing anything. Yu Lingfeng. When Xia Ying saw Yu Lingfeng, she felt like a traveler who had walked in the desert for several days and nights and finally saw an oasis. Yu Lingfeng heard the soft female voice beside him, turned to look at Xia Ying, held her hand, and his voice softened, "Are you okay?" Xia Ying nodded, her eyes red. Yu Lingfeng frowned and stared at Xia Ying's red eyes. Yu Lingfeng thought that Xia Ying had been wronged, and immediately turned his head to look at the tall and thin man on the ground, howling in pain. Yu Lingfeng raised his foot, ready to kick him to death. However, just when Yu Lingfeng was about to settle down, Officer Song appeared with a group of people and stopped Yu Lingfeng. Wait, he can't kill. Yu Lingfeng had a cold face, retracted his feet, and looked at Officer Song and his group. Why did this group of people arrive so quickly? Yu Lingfeng didn't know the reason until he saw the helicopter behind him. Police Officer Song was followed by top special police officers. Each one is fully armed, carrying the highest-end gun, hunched at the waist, always ready to go into battle. Everyone, follow me and rush in. Officer Song gave the order, and then everyone ran towards the chemical plant with their guns in hand. Yu Lingfeng was about to say something when he found De Jinlian and a few people outside, their legs weak and ready to run away. Yu Lingfeng's face was expressionless. Before Xia Ying could react, her hands were empty. When she turned around and saw a few people lying on the ground screaming, she realized that Yu Lingfeng had beaten them all to the ground. Xia Ying opened her mouth in surprise, she couldn't believe what she saw in front of her. On Officer Song's side, a group of people rushed in and found the ground full of howling ghosts and wolves. They were all seriously injured, lying on the ground unable to move, and could only keep wailing. Officer Song and the other special police officers looked confused. After reacting for 2 seconds, Officer Song swallowed. This Yu Lingfeng is simply terrifying. Yu Lingfeng approached Xia Ying, held Xia Ying in his arms, and tried to use his softest voice to comfort her, "Don't be afraid." Hearing Yu Lingfeng's words, "Don't be afraid," Xia Ying felt warm in her heart and felt her nose sore. She has lived 2 lives, and no one has ever been as kind to her as Yu Lingfeng. Yu Lingfeng felt Xia Ying's body twitching slightly in his arms, frowned and asked her in a low voice, "What? Are they bullying you?" When Yu Lingfeng said this, he glanced at the tall and thin man lying on the ground. The thin and tall gaze at Shang Yu Lingfeng immediately stiffened, and quickly waved his head. Finally, he was stared at by Yu Lingfeng. The tall and thin guy just closed his eyes and pretended to be dead. "My mother, who is this man?" Xia Ying shook her head and said to him with a slight cry, "Yu Lingfeng, I know you will come to save me." Yu Lingfeng pursed her lips and said nothing. He just raised his hand and touched her hair. At this moment, Yu Lingfeng's eyes warmed up like winter snow melting. "I know you will come to save me." When did she start to feel such a deep dependence on Yu Lingfeng? I glanced at the comment area and said, "This book has signed a contract with the website and will be charged, so focus on it. It's just free for now. As long as the editor notices it, it will be put on the shelf. Xiao has no right to choose." Old readers should all know that this is the case with most books. The early period is free for a period of time, and the later period is charged. There is no such thing as free to the end. If you keep writing for free, why would the author work so hard to figure out the plot and write the article until midnight? You can't eat your hobbies as a meal, right? The only thing you can do now is to vote more for recommendations, reward more and be more active, so that the book's performance will be better and the free period will be longer. It's a bit much to say, but that's pretty much it. Don't ask about whether to charge or not in the future. I'll explain it all at once today. Good night. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 259. Chapter 259. Do you think I am a vampire? Hey, salty pig hands, stay away from my little Ying-Ying, a little. At this moment, a disturbing sound sounded. Xia Ying then remembered that Chu Shenxiu was still there. When Xia Ying turned to look at Chu Shenxiu's symptoms had already begun to appear. Chu Shenxiu was unable to stand firmly, but he forced himself to stagger towards Xia Ying. Holy shit, who does that Yu Lingfeng think he is? He actually eats his cousin Xia Ying's tofu just because he's handsome. I can't bear it. Chu Shenxiu struggled to stop him, and then, halfway through, he gloriously had a close contact with Mother Earth. Xia Ying hurriedly ran out of Yu Lingfeng's arms and ran towards Chu Shenxiu. She stared at him nervously and asked, "Big turtle dove, how are you? Are you okay?" Chu Shenxiu raised his heavy eyelids and looked at Xia Ying, and struggled to say, "I feel like my soul is out of body." After Chu Shenxiu finished speaking, he lowered his head again and lay on the ground, no longer moving. Xia Ying looked back at Yu Lingfeng anxiously and said, "Yu Lingfeng, can you save him?" Yu Lingfeng was puzzled. He stared at Chu Shenxiu and asked, "What's wrong with him?" He was injected with poison, and the dose was quite large. Yu Lingfeng frowned slightly, took a step forward, and walked towards them. "Yu Lingfeng, I remember." Xia Ying paused, a little embarrassed, buried her head, and whispered with a red face, "Whenever I felt uncomfortable before, you could just kiss me and it would be fine, so." Yu Lingfeng. Chu Shenxiu. What? This man even kissed his cousin Sakura? Chu Shenxiu felt that his world collapsed at this moment, and it felt like the end of the world was coming. She is beautiful, kind, gentle, and cute. How can cousin Xiaoying, the little fairy who has a flat tire when driving and seeing flowers, be defiled by others? Although that Yu Lingfeng is indeed very handsome, he also saved his cousin Xiaoying, and... But no matter what, he can't kiss his cousin Sakura. Heartbroken, loveless, will never love again. Yu Lingfeng took a deep breath, reached out and patted Xia Ying on the back of the head, half helpless and half speechless, it's better to read less of that kind of comics. Xia Ying's face turned red. What is it, isn't it? Although the picture is a bit rotten, didn't Yu Lingfeng himself admit that his kiss had a healing effect? What did she say wrong? When Xia Ying was still doubting herself, Yu Lingfeng suddenly stretched out his index finger, put it to his mouth and bit it. Bright red blood came out. Yu Lingfeng grabbed Chu Shenxiu's head and dripped the blood on him. In the mouth. Chu Shenxiu frowned, with a sad face, and said angrily, "What are you doing? Do you think I'm a vampire?" Xia Ying laughed when she heard Chu Shenxiu's energetic voice. "Ha, turtle dove, how are you?" The smile on Chu Shenxiu's face froze. Holy shit! What is this operation? How do you feel that your head is not dizzy, your eyes are not dizzy, and you can still go up to the 8th floor in one breath? Are you playing a game? Can you resurrect with full health just by filling up your health? Chu Shenxiu climbed up and stood up. He stared at Yu Lingfeng with a blank face. His lips trembled and he said in surprise, You, who are you?" Yu Lingfeng ignored him with a cold face. Xia Ying smiled happily at the side, but when she reacted, she suddenly felt that something was wrong. Since Yu Lingfeng's blood is also healing, why did Yu Lingfeng always kiss her? Xia Ying, Yu Lingfeng's tricks are so deep. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 260. Chapter 260. Cousin Sakura actually likes that man. Just when Xia Ying was about to ask something, Yu Lingfeng turned and walked towards Officer Song and the others. Xia Ying and Chu Shenxiu quickly followed Yu Lingfeng. Xia Ying wanted to approach Yu Lingfeng, but Chu Shenxiu blocked Xia Ying with his huge body, like a big obstacle, like a copper wall. What are you doing? Xia Ying didn't understand what Chu Shenxiu was doing, and she was planning to ask Yu Lingfeng something. But Chu Shenxiu kept causing trouble. Wherever she went, he followed her, even more like a shadow than a shadow. Chu Shenxiu said seriously, "Cousin Xia Ying, you are still young, don't get in contact with that kind of man." Xia Ying raised her forehead helplessly. "That kind of man just saved you. But that kind of man still took advantage of you and even kissed you." Before Chu Shenxiu finished speaking, Xia Ying hurriedly stepped forward and covered his mouth that kept opening. "Can you please stop shouting so loudly?" Chu Shenxiu looked at Xia Ying's blushing face and immediately understood everything in his heart. Cousin Sakura actually likes that man. Xia Ying put down her hands and lowered her head awkwardly. Chu Shenxiu looked unhappy and whispered to Xia Ying, "Cousin Xia Ying, you are still young and cannot fall in love prematurely." Xia Ying rolled her eyes at him. "And even if you want to fall in love early, you must find the best man." Xia Ying, can you give me some preface and follow-up remarks? Cousin Sakura, you. Chu Shenxiu, if you make any noise again, I will tell my aunt what happened today. Xia Ying couldn't bear it. Chu Shenxiu immediately shut up. If his mother knew that something like this happened to him when he took Xia Ying out to play, let alone his mother, the entire big family would take turns beating him up. Yes, just hang him and beat him. When he was a child, he accidentally injured Xia Ying. In fact, it was just a scratch on the skin, and then all 7 aunts and 8 aunts came to his house to scold him. Then, he was beaten by his grandfather. After all, there is only one girl in the whole family, and they are all taking care of her like a treasure, without hurting her in the slightest. Be a bit skin-licking besides, this time, he and Xia Ying almost died. If this matter is known to his family, Chu Shenxiu will really die. This family where women are superior to men. Police officer Song and the others finally caught the criminal leaders and took them to the plane to prepare for trial by the international court. As for the group of minions, they were all escorted back by the special police car that came over. Xia Ying, Chu Shenxiu, and Yu Lingfeng were sitting in the back seat of the car. Chu Shenxiu originally wanted to sit between Xia Ying and Yu Lingfeng, but Xia Ying threatened her with this incident again, so he had no choice but to move his buttocks in frustration. Yu Lingfeng. Xia Ying pulled Yu Lingfeng's sleeve. Yu Lingfeng looked at her. Is there something you didn't tell me clearly? Xia Ying blinked her eyes, pursed her lips, and asked in a low voice. What? It's obvious that your blood can save people, so why don't you? Xia Ying paused and didn't say any more, but she knew that Yu Lingfeng understood what she meant. Yu Lingfeng rubbed Xia Ying's hair, leaned close to Xia Ying's ear, and whispered something that made Xia Ying blush. Do you think I can kiss everyone? Chu Shenxiu stretched his neck and pricked up his ears, wondering what Yu Lingfeng and Xia Ying were whispering. However, he didn't hear anything, but saw Xia Ying's face, which was red and bleeding. What happened? Thanks to the little cutie do degrees Celsius for the reward. End of this chapter.